Additions to Esther. Chapter 1. In the second year of the reign of Ahasuerus, the great king, on the first day of Nisan, Mordecai, the son of Jair, the son of Shimei, the son of Kish, of the tribe of Benjamin, a Jew dwelling in the city Susa, a great man serving in the king's palace, saw a vision. Now he was one of the captives whom Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, had carried captive from Jerusalem with Jeconiah, the king of Judea. This was his dream. Behold, voices and a noise, thunders and earthquake, tumult upon the earth. And behold, two great serpents came out, both ready for conflict. A great voice came from them. Every nation was prepared for battle by their voice, even to fight against the nation of the just. Behold, a day of darkness and blackness, suffering and anguish, affection and tumult upon the earth. And all the righteous nation was troubled, fearing their own afflictions. They prepared to die and cried to God. Something like a great river from a little spring with much water came from their cry. Light and the sun arose, and the lowly were exalted and devoured the honorable. Mordecai, who had seen this vision and what God desired to do, having arisen, kept it in his heart and desired by all means to interpret it, even until night. Mordecai rested quietly in the palace with Gabbatha and Tara, the king's two chamberlains, eunuchs who guarded the palace. He heard their conversation and searched out their plans. He learned that they were preparing to lay hands on King Ahasuerus, and he informed the king concerning them. The king examined the two chamberlains. They confessed and were led away and executed. The king wrote these things for a record. Mordecai also wrote concerning these matters. The king commanded Mordecai to serve in the palace and gave gifts for this service. But Haman, the son of Hammedatha, the Bugian, was honored in the sight of the king, and he endeavored to harm Mordecai and his people because of the king's two chamberlains. And it came to pass after these things, in the days of Ahasuerus. This Ahasuerus ruled over 127 provinces from India. In those days, when King Ahasuerus was on the throne in the city of Susa, in the third year of his reign, he made a feast for his friends, for people from the rest of the nations, for the nobles of the Persians and Medes, and for the chief of the local governors. After this, after he had shown them the wealth of his kingdom and the abundant glory of his wealth during 180 days, when the days of the wedding feast were completed, the king made a banquet lasting 6 days for the people of the nations who were present in the city, in the court of the king's house, which was adorned with fine linen and flax, on cords of fine linen and purple, fastened to golden and silver studs on pillars of white marble and stone. There were golden and silver couches on a pavement of emerald stone, and of mother of pearl, and of white marble, with transparent coverings variously flowered, having roses arranged around it. There were gold and silver cups, and a small cup of carbuncle set out, of the value of 30,000 talents, with abundant and sweet wine, which the king himself drank. This banquet was not according to the appointed law, but as the king desired to have it. He charged the stewards to perform his will and that of the company. Also, Vashti the queen made a banquet for the women in the palace where King Ahasuerus lived. Now on the seventh day, the king, being merry, told Haman, Bazan, Tara, Baraze, Zatolta, Abataza, and Saraba, the 7 chamberlains, servants of King Ahasuerus, to bring in the queen to him, to enthrone her and crown her with the diadem, and to show her to the princes and her beauty to the nations, for she was beautiful. But Queen Vashti refused to come with the chamberlains. So the king was grieved and angered, and he said to his friends, "This is what Vashti said. Therefore pronounce your legal judgment on this case." So Archelaus, Sarsatheus, and Malicia, the princes of the Persians and Medes, who were near the king, who sat chief in rank by the king, drew near to him and reported to him, according to the laws, what it was proper to do to Queen Vashti, because she had not done the things commanded by the king through the chamberlains. And Memucan said to the king and to the princes, "Queen Vashti has not wronged the king only, but also all the king's rulers and princes, for he has told them the words of the queen and how she disobeyed the king. As she then refused to obey King Ahasuerus, so this day the other wives of the chiefs of the Persians and Medes, having heard what she said to the king, would dare in the same way to dishonor their husbands. If then it seems good to the king, let him make a royal decree, and let it be written according to the laws of the Medes and Persians, and let him not alter it. Don't allow the queen to come in to him any more. Let the king give her royalty to a woman better than she. Let the law of the king, which he will have made, be widely proclaimed in his kingdom. Then all the women will give honor to their husbands, from the poor even to the rich. This advice pleased the king and the princes. And the king did as Memucan had said, and sent into all his kingdom through the several provinces, according to their language, so that men might be feared in their own houses. Chapter 2. After this, the king's anger was pacified, and he no more mentioned Vashti, bearing in mind what she had said and how he had condemned her. Then the servants of the king said, "Let chaste, beautiful young virgins be sought for the king. Let the king appoint local governors in all the provinces of his kingdom, and let them select beautiful, chaste young ladies and bring them to the city Susa, into the women's apartment. Let them be consigned to the king's chamberlain, the keeper of the women. Then let things for purification and other needs be given to them. Let the woman who pleases the king be queen instead of Vashti." This thing pleased the king, and he did so. Now there was a Jew in the city Susa, and his name was Mordecai, the son of Jairus, the son of Shimei, the son of Kish, of the tribe of Benjamin. He had been brought as a prisoner from Jerusalem, whom Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, had carried into captivity. He had a foster child, daughter of Aminadab, his father's brother. Her name was Esther. When her parents died, he brought her up to womanhood as his own. This lady was beautiful, and because the king's ordinance was published, many ladies were gathered to the city of Susa under the hand of Haggai, and Esther was brought to Haggai, the keeper of the women. The lady pleased him, and she found favor in his sight. He hurried to give her the things for purification, her portion, and the 7 maidens appointed her out of the palace. He treated her and her maidens well in the women's apartment. But Esther didn't reveal her family or her kindred, for Mordecai had charged her not to tell. But Mordecai used to walk every day by the women's court to see what would become of Esther. Now this was the time for a virgin to go into the king, when she had completed 12 months. For so are the days of purification fulfilled, 6 months, while they are anointing themselves with oil of myrrh, and 6 months with spices and women's purifications. And then the lady goes into the king. The officer that he commands to do so will bring her to come in with him from the women's apartment to the king's chamber. She enters in the evening, and in the morning she departs to the second women's apartment, where Haggai, the king's chamberlain, is keeper of the women. She doesn't go in to the king again unless she is called by name. And when the time was fulfilled for Esther, the daughter of Amminadab, the brother of Mordecai's father, to go in to the king, she neglected nothing which the chamberlain, the women's keeper, commanded. For Esther found grace in the sight of all who looked at her. So Esther went in to King Ahasuerus in the 12th month, which is Adar, in the 7th year of his reign. The king loved Esther, and she found favor beyond all the other virgins. He put the queen's crown on her. The king made a banquet for all his friends and great men for 7 days, and he highly celebrated the marriage of Esther, and he granted a remission of taxes to those who were under his dominion. Meanwhile, Mordecai served in the courtyard. Now Esther had not revealed her country, for so Mordecai commanded her to fear God and perform his commandments, as when she was with him. Esther didn't change her manner of life. 2 chamberlains of the king, the chiefs of the bodyguard, were grieved because Mordecai was promoted, and they sought to kill King Ahasuerus. And the matter was discovered by Mordecai, and he made it known to Esther, and she declared to the king the matter of the conspiracy. And the king examined the 2 chamberlains and hanged them. Then the king gave orders to make a note for a memorial in the royal library of the goodwill shown by Mordecai as a commendation. Chapter 3. After this, King Ahasuerus highly honored Haman, the son of Hammedatha, the Bugaean. He exalted him and set his seat above all his friends. All in the palace bowed down to him, for so the king had given orders to do. But Mordecai didn't bow down to him. And they in the king's palace say to Mordecai, Mordecai, why do you transgress the commands of the king? They questioned him daily, but he didn't listen to them. So they reported to Haman that Mordecai resisted the commands of the king, and Mordecai had shown to them that he was a Jew. When Haman understood that Mordecai didn't bow down to him, he was greatly enraged and plotted to utterly destroy all the Jews who were under the rule of Ahasuerus. In the 12th year of the reign of Ahasuerus, Haman made a decision by casting lots by day and month to kill the race of Mordecai in one day. The lot fell on the 14th day of the month of Adar. So he spoke to King Ahasuerus, saying, There is a nation scattered among the nations in all your kingdom, and their laws differ from all the other nations. They disobey the king's laws. It is not expedient for the king to tolerate them. If it seem good to the king, let him make a decree to destroy them, and I will remit into the king's treasury 10,000 talents of silver. So the king took off his ring and gave it into the hands of Haman to seal the decrees against the Jews. The king said to Haman, Keep the silver and treat the nation as you will. So the king's recorders were called in the 1st month, on the 13th day, and they wrote as Haman commanded to the captains and governors in every province, from India even to Ethiopia, to 127 provinces, and to the rulers of the nations according to their languages, in the name of King Ahasuerus. The message was sent by couriers throughout the kingdom of Ahasuerus to utterly destroy the race of the Jews on the 1st day of the 12th month, which is Adar, and to plunder their goods. Copies of the letters were published in every province, and an order was given to all the nations to be ready for that day. This business was hastened also in Susa. The king and Haman began to drink, but the city was confused. Chapter 4. But Mordecai, having perceived what was done, tore his garments, put on sackcloth, and sprinkled dust upon himself. Having rushed forth through the open streets of the city, he cried with a loud voice, "A nation that has done no wrong is going to be destroyed." He came to the king's gate and stood, for it was not lawful for him to enter into the palace wearing sackcloth and ashes. And in every province where the letters were published, there was crying, lamentation, and great mourning on the part of the Jews. They wore sackcloth and ashes. The queen's maids and chamberlains went in and told her, and when she had heard what was done, she was deeply troubled. She sent clothes to Mordecai to replace his sackcloth, but he refused. So Esther called for her chamberlain Hatak, who waited upon her, and she sent to learn the truth from Mordecai. Mordecai showed him what was done, and the promise which Haman had made the king of 10,000 talents to be paid into the treasury, that he might destroy the Jews. And he gave him the copy of what was published in Susa concerning their destruction to show to Esther, and told him to charge her to go in and entreat the king, and to beg him for the people. "Remember," he said, "the days of your humble condition, how you were nursed by my hand, because Haman, who holds the next place to the king, has spoken against us to cause our death. Call upon the Lord and speak to the king concerning us, to deliver us from death." So Hatak went in and told her all these words. Esther said to Hatak, "Go to Mordecai and say, all the nations of the empire know that any man or woman who goes into the king, into the inner court without being called, that person must die, unless the king stretches out his golden scepter. Then he shall live. I haven't been called to go into the king for 30 days. So Hatak reported to Mordecai all the words of Esther. Then Mordecai said to Hatak, "Go and say to her, Esther, don't say to yourself that you alone will escape in the kingdom more than all the other Jews. For if you keep quiet on this occasion, help and protection will come to the Jews from another place, but you and your father's house will perish. Who knows if you have been made queen for this occasion?" And Esther sent the messenger who came to her to Mordecai, saying, "Go and assemble the Jews that are in Susa, and all of you fast for me. Don't eat or drink for 3 days, night and day. My maidens and I will also fast. Then I will go in to the king contrary to the law, even if I must die." So Mordecai went and did all that Esther commanded him. He prayed to the Lord, making mention of all the works of the Lord. He said, "Lord God, you are king ruling over all, for all things are in your power, and there is no one who can oppose you in your purpose to save Israel. For you have made the heaven and the earth and every wonderful thing under heaven. You are Lord of all, and there is no one who can resist you, Lord. You know all things. You know, Lord, that it is not in insolence, nor arrogance, nor love of glory that I have done this, to refuse to bow down to the arrogant Haman. For I would gladly have kissed the soles of his feet for the safety of Israel. But I have done this that I might not set the glory of man above the glory of God. I will not worship anyone except you, my Lord, and I will not do these things in arrogance. And now, O Lord God, the King, the God of Abraham, spare your people. For our enemies are planning our destruction, and they have desired to destroy your ancient inheritance. Do not overlook your people, whom you have redeemed for yourself out of the land of Egypt. listen to my prayer. Have mercy on your inheritance and turn our mourning into gladness, that we may live and sing praise to your name, O Lord. Don't utterly destroy the mouth of those who praise you, O Lord. All Israel cried with all their might, for death was before their eyes. Chapter 5. It came to pass on the third day, when she had ceased praying, that she took off her servant's dress and put on a glorious apparel. Being splendidly dressed, and having called upon God the overseer and preserver of all things, she took her two maids, and she leaned upon one as a delicate female, and the other followed bearing her train. She was blooming in the perfection of her beauty. Her face was cheerful and looked lovely, but her heart was filled with fear. Having passed through all the doors, she stood before the king. He was sitting on his royal throne. He had put on all his glorious apparel, covered all over with gold and precious stones, and was very terrifying. And having raised his face resplendent with glory, he looked with intense anger. The queen fell and changed her color as she fainted. She bowed herself upon the head of the maid who went before her. But God changed the spirit of the king to gentleness. And in intense feeling, he sprang from off his throne and took her into his arms until she recovered. He comforted her with peaceful words and said to her, "What is the matter, Esther? I am your relative. Cheer up. You shall not die, for our command is openly declared to you. Draw near." And having raised the golden scepter, he laid it upon her neck and embraced her. He said, "Speak to me." So she said to him, "I saw you, my lord, as an angel of God, and my heart was troubled for fear of your glory. For you, my lord, are to be wondered at, and your face is full of grace." While she was speaking, she fainted and fell. Then the king was troubled, and all his servants comforted her. The king said, "What do you desire, Esther? What is your request? Ask even to the half of my kingdom, and it shall be yours." Esther said, "Today is a special day. So, if it seems good to the king, let both him and Haman come to the feast which I will prepare this day." The king said, "Hurry and bring Haman here, that we may do as Esther said." So they both came to the feast about which Esther had spoken. At the banquet, the king said to Esther, "What is your request, Queen Esther?" "You shall have all that you require." She said, "My request and my petition, if I have found favor in the king's sight, let the king and Haman come again tomorrow to the feast which I shall prepare for them, and tomorrow I will do as I have done today." So Haman went out from the king, very glad and merry. But when Haman saw Mordecai, the Jew, in the court, he was greatly enraged. Having gone into his own house, he called his friends and his wife Zeresh. He showed them his wealth and the glory with which the king had invested him, and how he had promoted him to be chief ruler in the kingdom. Haman said, "The queen has called no one to the feast with the king but me, and I am invited tomorrow. But these things don't please me, while I see Mordecai the Jew in the court." Then Zeresh, his wife, and his friends said to him, "Let a 50-cubit tall gallows be made for you. In the morning you speak to the king, and let Mordecai be hanged on the gallows. But you go in to the feast with the king and be merry." The saying pleased Haman, and the gallows was prepared. Chapter 6. The Lord removed sleep from the king that night. So he told his servant to bring in the books, the registers of daily events, to read to him. And he found the records written concerning Mordecai, how he had told the king about the king's two chamberlains when they were keeping guard and sought to lay hands on Ahasuerus. The king said, "What honor or favor have we done for Mordecai?" The king's servants said, "You haven't done anything for him." And while the king was inquiring about the kindness of Mordecai, behold, Haman was in the court. The king said, "Who is in the court?" Now Haman had come in to speak to the king about hanging Mordecai on the gallows which he had prepared. The king's servant said, "Behold, Haman stands in the court." And the king said, "Call him." The king said to Haman, "What should I do for the man whom I wish to honor?" Haman said within himself, "Whom would the king honor but myself?" He said to the king, "As for the man whom the king wishes to honor, let the king's servants bring the robe of fine linen which the king puts on, and the horse on which the king rides, and let him give it to one of the king's noble friends, and let him dress the man whom the king loves. Let him mount him on the horse, and proclaim through the streets of the city, saying, 'This is what will be done for every man whom the king honors.'" Then the king said to Haman, "You have spoken well. Do so for Mordecai the Jew, who waits in the palace, and let not a word of what you have spoken be neglected." So Haman took the robe and the horse, dressed Mordecai, mounted him on the horse, and went through the streets of the city proclaiming, "This is what will be done for every man whom the king wishes to honor." Then Mordecai returned to the palace, but Haman went home mourning, with his head covered. Haman related the events that had happened to him to Zeresh his wife and to his friends. His friends and his wife said to him, "If Mordecai is of the race of the Jews, and you have begun to be humbled before him, you will assuredly fall, and you will not be able to withstand him, for the living God is with him." While they were still speaking, the chamberlains arrived to rush Haman to the banquet which Esther had prepared. Chapter 7. So the king and Haman went in to drink with the queen. The king said to Esther at the banquet on the second day, "What is it, Queen Esther? What is your request? What is your petition? It shall be done for you, up to half of my kingdom." She answered and said, "If I have found favor in the sight of the king, let my life be granted as my petition, and my people as my request. For both I and my people are sold for destruction, pillage, and genocide. If both we and our children were sold for male and female slaves, I would not have bothered you, for this isn't worthy of the king's palace." The king said, "Who has dared to do this thing?" Esther said, "The enemy is Haman, this wicked man." Then Haman was terrified in the presence of the king and the queen. The king rose up from the banquet to go into the garden. Haman began to beg the queen for mercy, for he saw that he was in serious trouble. The king returned from the garden, and Haman had fallen upon the couch begging the queen for mercy. The king said, "Will you even assault my wife in my house?" And when Haman heard it, he changed countenance. And Bugathan, one of the chamberlains, said to the king, "Behold, Haman has also prepared a gallows for Mordecai, who spoke concerning the king, and a 50-cubit high gallows has been set up on Haman's property." The king said, "Let him be hanged on it." So Haman was hanged on the gallows that had been prepared for Mordecai. Then the king's wrath was abated. Chapter 8. On that day, King Ahasuerus gave to Esther all that belonged to Haman the slanderer. The king called Mordecai, for Esther had told that he was related to her. The king took the ring which he had taken away from Haman and gave it to Mordecai. Esther appointed Mordecai over all that had been Haman's. She spoke yet again to the king and fell at his feet and implored him to undo Haman's mischief and all that he had done against the Jews. Then the king extended the golden scepter to Esther, and Esther arose to stand near the king. Esther said, "If it seems good to you and I have found favor in your sight, let an order be sent that the letters sent by Haman may be reversed, letters that were written for the destruction of the Jews who are in your kingdom. For how could I see the affliction of my people, and how could I survive the destruction of my kindred?" Then the king said to Esther, "If I have given and freely granted you all that was Haman's, and hanged him on a gallows because he laid his hands upon the Jews, what more do you seek? Write in my name whatever seems good to you, and seal it with my ring. For whatever is written at the command of the king and sealed with my ring cannot be countermanded." So the scribes were called in the first month, which is Nisan, on the 23rd day of the same year, and orders were written to the Jews, whatever the king had commanded, to the local governors and chiefs of the local governors, from India even to Ethiopia, 127 local governors, according to the several provinces, in their own languages. They were written by order of the king, sealed with his ring, and the letters were sent by the couriers. In them, he charged them to use their own laws in every city, to help each other, and to treat their adversaries and those who attacked them as they pleased on one day in all the kingdom of Ahasuerus, on the 13th day of the 12th month, which is Adar. Let the copies be posted in conspicuous places throughout the kingdom. Let all the Jews be ready against this day to fight against their enemies. So the horsemen went forth with haste to perform the king's commands. The ordinance was also published in Susa. Mordecai went out robed in royal apparel, wearing a golden crown and a diadem of fine purple linen. The people in Susa saw it and rejoiced. The Jews had light and gladness in every city and province where the ordinance was published. Wherever the proclamation took place, the Jews had joy and gladness, feasting and mirth. Many of the Gentiles were circumcised and became Jews for fear of the Jews. Chapter 9. Now in the 12th month, on the 13th day of the month, which is Adar, the letters written by the king arrived. In that day, the adversaries of the Jews perished, for no one resisted, through fear of them. For the chiefs of the local governors, and the princes and the royal scribes honored the Jews, for the fear of Mordecai was upon them. For the order of the king was in force, that he should be celebrated in all the kingdom. In the city Susa, the Jews killed 500 men, including Pharsanes, Delphon, Phasga, Pharadata, Barea, Sabaka, Marmasima, Ruphius, Arsaeus, and Zabutheus, the 10 sons of Haman, the son of Hammedatha, the Bugoyan, the enemy of the Jews, and they plundered their property on the same day. The number of those who perished in Susa was reported to the king. Then the king said to Esther, "The Jews have slain 500 men in the city Susa. What do you think they have done in the rest of the country? What more do you ask that it may be done for you?" Esther said to the king, "Let it be granted to the Jews to do the same to them tomorrow. Also, hang the bodies of the 10 sons of Haman." He permitted it to be done, and he gave up to the Jews of the city the bodies of the sons of Haman to hang. The Jews assembled in Susa on the 14th day of Adar and killed 300 men, but plundered no property. The rest of the Jews who were in the kingdom assembled and helped one another and obtained rest from their enemies. For they destroyed 15,000 of them on the 13th day of Adar, but took no spoil. They rested on the 14th of the same month and kept it as a day of rest with joy and gladness. The Jews in the city of Susa assembled also on the 14th day and rested, and they also observed the 15th with joy and gladness. On this account, then, the Jews dispersed in every foreign land keep the 14th of Adar as a holy day with joy, each sending gifts of food to his neighbor. Mordecai wrote these things in a book and sent them to the Jews, as many as were in the kingdom of Ahasuerus, both those who were near and those who were far away, to establish these as joyful days, and to keep the 14th and 15th of Adar. For on these days the Jews obtained rest from their enemies. And in that month, which was Adar, in which a change was made for them from mourning to joy and from sorrow to a holiday, to spend the whole of it in good days of feasting and gladness, sending portions to their friends and to the poor. And the Jews consented to this as Mordecai wrote to them, showing how Haman, the son of Hammedatha, the Macedonian, fought against them, how he made a decree and cast lots to destroy them utterly. Also, how he went into the king, telling him to hang Mordecai. But all the calamities he tried to bring upon the Jews came upon himself, and he was hanged, along with his children. Therefore these days were called Purim, because of the lots, for in their language they are called Purim, because of the words of this letter, and because of all they suffered on this account, and all that happened to them. Mordecai established it, and the Jews took upon themselves, upon their offspring, and upon those who were joined to them to observe it. Neither would they on any account behave differently. But these days were to be a memorials kept in every generation, city, family, and province. These days of Purim shall be kept forever, and their memorial shall not fail in any generation. Queen Esther, the daughter of Aminadab and Mordecai the Jew, wrote all that they had done, and gave the confirmation of the letter about Purim. Mordecai and Esther the queen established this decision on their own, pledging their own well-being to their plan. And Esther established it by a command forever. And it was written for a memorial. Chapter 10. The king levied a tax upon his kingdom, both by land and sea. As for his strength and valor, and the wealth and glory of his kingdom, behold, they are written in the book of the Persians and Medes for a memorial. Mordecai was viceroy to King Ahasuerus, and was a great man in the kingdom, honored by the Jews, and lived his life loved by all his nations, said, "These things have come from God." For I remember the dream which I had concerning these matters, for not one detail of them has failed. There was the little spring which became a river, and there was light, and the sun, and much water. The river is Esther, whom the king married and made queen. The two serpents are Haman and me. The nations are those which combined to destroy the name of the Jews. But as for my nation, this is Israel, even those who cried to God and were delivered. For the Lord delivered his people. The Lord rescued us out of all these calamities, and God worked such signs and great wonders as have not been done among the nations. Therefore, he ordained two lots, one for the people of God and one for all the other nations. And these two lots came for an appointed season, and for a day of judgment before God and for all the nations. God remembered his people and vindicated his inheritance. They shall observe these days in the month Adar on the 14th and on the 15th day of the month with an assembly, joy, and gladness before God throughout the generations forever among his people Israel. In the 4th year of the reign of Ptolemaeus and Cleopatra, Dositheus, who said he was a priest and Levite, and Ptolemaeus his son brought this letter of Purim, which they said was authentic, and that Lysimachus, the son of Ptolemaeus, who was in Jerusalem, had interpreted.